Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mark Littler. I'm the owner and editor-in-chief of The Whisky Wash, and I'm also the owner of Mark Littler Limited. Now, if you didn't know, at Mark Littler Limited, one of my jobs is to build people awesome collections of whiskey, which is why I thought I'd show you this amazing collection of whiskey that we've built for somebody. And you know what, while it's all here, before we send it off to LCB, to their account, let's just take a look at some of the bottles. And obviously we're starting here with the Springbank Millennium collection. Now, for such amazing bottles, they come in pretty standard ordinary boxes, but the Millennium collection was released, it started around 1998 and it ran over a number of consecutive years. It started out with a 25-year-old, which is pretty standard looking, and to be fair with you, they are all pretty standard looking bottles. There's no difference between the labels and anything on the bottles. So you've got a 25, a 30, a 35, a 40, a 45, and then you end up all the way at the top of the range with this, the 50-year-old. Now, these bottles sort of are priced, to be honest with you, they're not that expensive in real terms for what they are. Like the 50-year-old, I think the record price is like £10,000–15,000, somewhere in that region for it. And look, it's 50-year-old Springbank. And this is really, like, again, when people ask me what to collect, like, just, you've got to look for something that's got value in there. And look, this is a really nice vertical, 25 to 50 years old. It's been on the market for the best part of 25, 26, 27 years now. It's quite rare. And look, this, to show you what an amazing time period this was, here you have in each of the bottles, you get invited to go and buy your own cask of Springbank. And that's something else that we do at Mark Littler Limited. In case you didn't know, we help people sell their cask investments. So again, if you'd bought a cask of Springbank from around the year 2000, which would have only been £1,500, £2,000, depending on what size cask you bought, that would be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds today. So the bottles are fantastic. The casks are also good, but look, you can't do that again with Springbank. You can't go, you can't knock at the door at Springbank and see if they'll sell you a cask of whiskey. It's just not going to happen because the market's moved on and they've moved on as a business. They needed those cask sales because they voluntarily closed down in the 1980s. Now, speaking of another cask program, did you know that Macallan had a single cask program, and around the year 2000 you could walk up and buy a cask? Now, these are not bottles from that cask program, but what they are, it's the Macallan, this is like the exceptional cask series it's technically called, but everybody calls it the Cask Strength series. But these are all single cask strength Macallan, which is incredibly rare for Macallan. There's only a few series that does it. It's the Easter Oakie series, this one, and then the other more modern exceptional cask series. And again, when were these released? Guess what? Around the year 2000. This one is actually from 2002, and it's all single cask strength, which is really hard to do. And people say, why don't people do more single cask strength releases like Macallan? Well, it's just a numbers game. Even if you've got a sherry puncheon, you're not going to be getting 1,000 bottles out of it. The best you'll be getting is sort of 400 or 500 bottles. And these are quite interesting because these are all 500ml bottles. And I do think that there is something to be said about, like, come on, if you were offered the chance to buy two different bottles of whiskey, rather than one bottle of whiskey for the same price, I would always go for the two. I want to try more different whiskies rather than just trying one big bottle. And the 700ml format, with the way that prices are going, is probably a bit redundant because it's a bit bloody expensive, to be fair. And speaking of expensive, these aren't really that expensive. £3,000–5,000, somewhere in that region per bottle. And they're incredibly rare. Well, not too rare. You can pick them up in most, you could probably find one every couple of months at auction, but it's nice to have a full set. And if you're kind of seeing here what we do when we build collections for people, and if you want me to build you a collection, get in touch. We go for things that are like chapters of a book, rather than just buying disparate things. We kind of look, okay, right, well, here's my Springbank Millennium chapter. Here's my Macallan Cask Strength chapter. And here we have another chapter. This is the 18-year-old chapter. Now, this is not the full vertical, although if you remember in the news in 2020, there was a boy who was given a bottle of Macallan 18-year-old every year by his dad for his birthday, and then he sold it. Well, we were the brokers that sold that collection, and we were the ones that got all the news coverage. And you know what? I'm still dining out on that bit of PR now. It's fantastic. But to me, the 18-year-old Macallan series is fantastic. It's I think it is the longest running fully aged statement series bottles of whiskey that have been on the market. I think it started in 1983. If you go back to our last video, you'll see that we actually have one of the proprietary sketches for this watercolour on the shop for sale. So this is the front of Easter Elkey's house, painted by David Holmes, and the one that we've got is the back of Easter Elkey's house. So, and these Macallans, you can kind of see a little transition here. So this is 1975, this is the earliest one in this little vertical. So distilled in 1975, and you've got a bottled in year 1993. So these predate these by a decent way. But as you go through and you get into, let me just check this is right, yeah, these are all in order. So they did make a move to tubes at one point, which for anyone with terrible fingernails like me will absolutely hate. So here you can see this is the 1981 vintage. And again, they do begin to drop the year that it was bottled. I don't think it was necessarily on this one. I think it was a bit later. Let's just pull through to this one. And of course, why would they drop the year that it was bottled? Well, it just makes it easier to have all stock from a single vintage, because this is why it says distilled in 1984 and earlier years. So the age statement's always 18, but it's not necessarily just 18-year-old whiskey that's in there. If they had one case or one barrel of 18-year-old whiskey from 1984 and 100 from another year that were older, they could mix the two together, called vatting, and it would take on the age statement of the youngest whiskey. So the AYS, the age of the youngest spirit. So this is like a little mini vertical, 1975 all the way up until 1986. So it's just a really super, again, little concise chapter. This client can build either or the earlier vintages or the later vintages if they wanted. And again, these are nice sort of ages to be getting into, because of course this next year will be 50 years since it was distilled, 1975. So I'm not just a Macallan fanboy, I'm a fanboy of a lot of different things, but why I like a lot of these distilleries, especially Macallan, is they do things to make you talk about. And that is, again, something that this distillery has done. And this is a fantastic bottle if you've never seen this before. It's so good. They put it in a museum style presentation case, and it's for good reason. Let me just take this off. This is just foam in here. Let's take this off here. There we go. And this is the Ardbeg 1965. It's a vatting of 2 different casks. It is, I think it's in my mind, it's the oldest Ardbeg that's ever been released by the distillery en masse. So in terms of, this was a limited edition run of 261 bottles. Now, there have been some 40-plus-year-old age statements from the distillery, but as far as I'm aware, they're just sort of like one-of-one bottlings. So I wouldn't really consider them sort of like mass market things. And this again came out about 2005, I think, or thereabouts, and they haven't done anything since. But I think we're going to start seeing changes with Ardbeg. The reason why they've not done anything like this since is because they don't have the old stocks, because when the distillery was bought by Glenmorangie PLC, there was very little whiskey sat in the warehouses. Fast forward now, Glenmorangie PLC is now part of Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. They know a little bit about marketing premium goods, even though all premium goods are a bit rocky at the moment. But look, Ardbeg are going places. Ardbeg have got the creative energy now that I would argue Macallan lack. Macallan's kind of gone a bit more super premium, you know, with these releases that they're doing with Bentley, for instance, and things. It's kind of out of scope for most normal collectors. But if you look at the Ardbeg Y2K, the reason why I absolutely love that, it's a £600-700 bottle of whiskey. It's 23-year-old whiskey, and it's really nicely well presented. And again, here you go, just in case you fancied it, here is the miniature of this. So again, in this reason, Why was this purchased? Well, it's probably the best bottle of Ardbeg that's ever been released from the distillery in terms of age statement. You've got a miniature to give it a go if you want. And it's also, we're not kind of being too exposed to one particular distillery, you'll note here. Yes, there's absolutely an emphasis, come on, you can get in there. There's absolutely an emphasis on Macallan in terms of we've got two collections here, but we've also got a decent showing of Springbank, which after Macallan in the market is number 2 and has been number 2 in the market for a very long period of time. And then we kind of thought we'd go a bit left field for this last bottle. Now this is the Midleton Very Rare 1988. It's a blended whiskey, and you know what? It is absolutely fantastic. It started in the early 1980s. This one is the 1988, and for whatever reason, it has the most insane price history at auction. Like I think the record for this bottle is like over £25,000, and this 1988 in particular is very difficult to get hold of. Now, we do have the box for it, but look, this is what happens when you have a 40 or almost a 40-year-old cardboard box. But the things that matter is that you still have all the bits here. You've got your original invitation here showing bottle number 0013, and what number's on the bottle? Number 0013. So these have always been together, and this is kind of like original 1980s, ooh, silky velour packaging here. And of course, I'm not going to put that back in here because this is not what you want your bottle to be in. But there's a lot of hype about the Irish whiskey market, and where do I sit on it? Well, if you're a big historic old brand like Midleton, yeah, absolutely. If you're a modern distillery, and I'd say modern is less than 25, 50 years, then it's going to be tough. Sure, you can make a run of things at the start when there's a lot of noise about your new releases, but where do you go for your middle-age years when you're just churning out 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old whiskey? That's where it's going to get difficult. But Midleton is an absolute standout of an Irish distillery, huge over in America. And again, it just rounds this collection off really nicely. So yeah, this is, for those of you who stuck around this far, I'll show you these. These are not technically on show, but I'll show you them. We've just recently had a go at doing our first little publications. So this one is about so we've got these limited edition books printed in issues of 100, and we've got this really nice collection of bottles here, a 46 Select Reserve, a 48 Select Reserve, and a 49 Millennium malt, and we've done a really nice job of that. And then this one is a super amazing collection of about 100 bottles of Macallan that we sold, and we just had these books made for the person who bought it and also for the person who sold it. So there you go, a little bit of a sneak peek, and a sneak peek into an amazing collection of whiskey that we've put together for a customer. So what do you think? Of course, you're going to have your opinions about what you would put in and what you would take out, but if money was no object, what would you add to this collection? And get in the comments below, and if you think someone's found a really solid example of what to put into a collection, give their comment a thumbs up and a like, and I'll join you in the next video.